And thanks to you at home for joining us this hour. Happy Friday. Happy to have you with us. This, at least, is not one of those Fridays when it's a big news day as a surprise. This is a Friday when we knew we were going to get a bunch of important information today on the ongoing Russia investigation that has become the defining crisis of this presidency. We knew this was going to be a big day, and the news gods did not disappoint. So let's just jump right in. There are two major figures in the president's orbit whose legal worries got much worse today for themselves, and whose relationship to the overall scandal involving the president somewhat changed today. One of them is the president's campaign chair, Paul Manafort, and one of them is the president's longtime personal lawyer, who served for a decade as a senior executive at the president's real estate business. Now, heading into today, we had expected that the filing from prosecutors in the Manafort case might be the one that would advance our understanding of the scandal and the status of the investigation the most. It would help us understand any further potential prosecutions, for example, more than anything else we've seen thus far. We do now have the Manafort filing, as promised. The special counsel in that filing lays out, for the benefit of the judge in the Manafort case, what Mueller and his team say are the lies of Paul Manafort since he's been supposedly cooperating with prosecutors after he pled guilty and entered into a plea agreement with prosecutors back in September. So we do have that filing, as expected. It's interesting. It does raise some interesting questions, especially in terms of Manafort's contacts with the Trump administration well after the campaign was over, and well after the time when Manafort was supposedly no longer associated with the president or his administration at all. But prosecutors filed a separate document with the judge in Manafort's case today, which we don't get to see. In addition to this one that we did get to see, Mueller's office today filed a sealed document with the judge, and that contains all of the information, they say, that involves ongoing investigations or any uncharged individuals. Again, that bit is filed under seal today, and it may just be that the juiciest stuff is in that sealed filing. We won't know until all that stuff in that document somewhere down the line is unsealed. So it's interesting. We were really, we had a lot of anticipation in terms of the Manafort filing today. All in all, though, honestly, the court filings where we learned the most today was not the filing related to Manafort. It was the stuff related to Michael Cohen. And so I want to just go through these. I'm not a lawyer. Statistically speaking, probably neither are you. But these filings are written pretty much in layman's language. I think they're written in layman's language enough so that we can just go through them here. They came out late tonight. You may not have had a chance to read them yet. And I think we can basically get almost all the news value out of them, basically just from the text of these documents. So we're going to go through each of these documents in turn, and then we're going to bring on some expert advice from lawyers and reporters who have been involved in the heart of this story and in the jurisdictions in question here. But let's start first with that Manafort filing. We'll talk about the questions it raises. Then we're going to talk about the two filings that we got about Michael Cohen today. The two filings for Michael Cohen today. First one is from the prosecutors in the Southern District of New York. That one is fascinating today because it reads basically like an epic patriotic poem about Michael Cohen's crimes. The federal prosecutors in New York are apparently quite upset with Michael Cohen. They basically want the book thrown at him. That's the filing today, that SDNY filing that has led to all the headlines you might have seen about how Michael Cohen is now facing potentially substantial prison time. So there's the Manafort filing and there's the SDNY filing on Michael Cohen. But then there's the second filing on Michael Cohen. And for my money, that's the document from which we got the most new information and the most intriguing information. So that's the third document we're going to talk about tonight. And that's a relatively short document, a 7-page long filing from Mueller's office about Michael Cohen, explaining why his cooperation has been so valuable to them. That document, I think you'll see, has the most intriguing stuff in it. It's also the document that probably offers the most bad news for the president, for the White House, for anybody who may have been involved in anything Russia-related during the campaign, who also had a link to the Trump organization, the president's business. The Mueller filing in the Cohen case tonight is the one that I think poses the biggest apparent risks, not just for the president, but even potentially for members of his family, who, of course, were working at the Trump organization, and also, we know, dealing with some Russia-related matters during the campaign. So that's the basic map of what we've just received tonight from these court filings. That's the basic map of where we are going. We're going to do the Manafort filing, and then we're going to do SDNY, and then we're going to do the special counsel's office filing. And the special counsel's office filing, I think, is the one that kind of blows up tonight. All right, let's start with Manafort. Manafort filing is 10 pages, and this is basically a notice to the judge from Mueller's office explaining why Mueller's prosecutors determined that Paul Manafort was lying to them, that he's in breach of his plea agreement because he hasn't been telling them the truth. According to Mueller's prosecutors in this filing today, they only need to demonstrate to the judge that they have a good faith belief that Paul Manafort has been lying to them. But Mueller's prosecutors offer to the judge that if she would like them to go beyond that, if she would like them to actually prove all these alleged lies by Manafort, they are prepared to do so in a hearing at the judge's discretion, at which they would provide documentary evidence and witness testimony. Now, what we learn in this Manafort filing tonight, factually, is that Manafort and his legal team had 3 meetings with the special counsel's office and the FBI before Manafort ever pled guilty and entered into his plea agreement in September. So 3 meetings before he pled and started his agreement. Then after he pled and entered into that agreement, he had 9 additional meetings with the special counsel's office and the FBI, so 12 meetings altogether. Manafort, we learned tonight, has also testified twice to a grand jury that's been convened in this matter, once at the end of October and once in the beginning of November. But apparently, according to this document tonight, less than a week after Manafort's second round before the grand jury, the prosecutors from the special counsel's office confronted Manafort and his defense team with their belief that he had been telling porky pies, that he had been lying, and they were not happy about it. Quoting from tonight's filing, quote, Manafort met with the special counsel's office and the FBI on 12 occasions. 3 of these meetings occurred prior to the defendant entering into his plea agreement. Manafort was represented by defense counsel at every meeting with the government. Manafort also was called to testify before the grand jury on 2 occasions, October 26th and November 2nd, 2018. On November 8th, 2018, the government informed defense counsel that it believed Manafort had lied in multiple ways and on multiple occasions. Special counsel's office offered to provide further details and requested the defense to make any responsive submissions, orally or in writing, before the government made any final determination. The defense then met or spoke with the government on several occasions where the government enumerated the basis for its views. And again, the basis, the views here are that, hey, your client's a liar and he keeps telling us lies. This is a problem. So the special counsel's office says they meet with Manafort's defense counsel a whole bunch of times, basically confronting them and trying to work this out so Manafort can stop lying, so he can clean up what he's been lying to them about. But according to prosecutors, quote, in none of the communications with Manafort's counsel was any factual or legal argument made as to why the government's assessment of Manafort's credibility was erroneous or made without good faith. Okay, so what this is Mueller's office, the special counsel's office, saying, Paul Manafort keeps lying to us. We've got him before the grand jury. We can't have a lying witness before the grand jury. We confronted him. We confronted his defense counsel with the fact that he's been lying. They were not able to talk us out of that determination or fix it in any way. And so now, judge, we are ready to tell you. We are ready to prove it in court if you need us to. We are ready to maintain to you that he has been lying to us about 5 different things. And this is the part of this 10-page filing about Manafort where you end up seeing some of the redactions here. It starts to look like this. But even with the redactions, you can still get the basics of this sort of 5-part list of things they say that they're lying about. Mueller's office says that Manafort lied to them about his interactions with Konstantin Kilimnik. Remember that name? Kilimnik was sort of Manafort's right-hand man in his business in Ukraine. And prosecutors have already said in other court filings that they believe Konstantin Kilimnik is associated with Russian intelligence services. So in the filing, prosecutors say Manafort's been lying about the fact and the frequency of what appear to be his interactions with Kilimnik. But again, there are a whole bunch of redactions there. Then there's an intriguing subheading in this part of the filing where Mueller's office also says that Manafort lied about his knowledge of what appears to be somebody else meeting with Kilimnik. See that line there next to the bullet point? Redacted, 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 meeting with Kilimnik. That name is blacked out. I mean, there is open source reporting that has sort of followed the saga of Paul Manafort and Konstantin Kilimnik and how Manafort's business entanglements and Russian entanglements followed him into his involvement in the Trump campaign. Because of that open source reporting, it seems possible that one of the things that could be behind the redactions here could be related to Manafort's knowledge of a meeting that allegedly happened during the presidential campaign between Manafort's own right-hand man, Kilimnik, and this Russian oligarch named Oleg Deripaska, a Russian oligarch to whom Manafort reportedly owed money and to whom Manafort reportedly offered private briefings about the campaign while he was still Trump's campaign chair. But again, that is my inference. This section of the filing is all blacked out. We will take some expert advice later on this hour as to whether or not it is a reasonable inference I am making here as to whether something having to do with Oleg Deripaska and meeting with Konstantin Kilimnik might be one of the things that Paul Manafort is allegedly lying about here, according to prosecutors. The prosecutors go on to say that Manafort also lied to them about the involvement of Kilimnik in a witness tampering scheme to which Manafort has already pled guilty. They say he lied to them about a $125,000 payment that Manafort made last year. Manafort, according to prosecutors, misled them as to what that payment was for and who it ultimately went to. And then there's a couple more things they said that he lied to them about. And one of them is almost a little bit funny. One of them is not funny and is probably bad news for the White House. The funny one is this. It's listed as point number 4 in the filing. Quote, another DOJ investigation. Quote, during meetings with the government prior to pleading guilty and signing his plea agreement, Manafort provided information about redacted thing, black box. It was information, quote, that was pertinent to an investigation in another district. However, after signing the plea agreement, Manafort told the government, including Department of Justice personnel handling this investigation, he told them a different and exculpatory version of the events. He then subsequently changed that version too, in order to more closely conform to his earlier statements, after his own defense counsel, in the government's presence, showed Manafort notes that had been taken of his earlier proffer session. So, I mean, it's not like a whoopee cushion or anything, but the reason I say that is somewhat comical is that what Mueller's prosecutors are saying here is that Paul Manafort was so comfortable lying to prosecutors so much of the time on so many things that ultimately he couldn't keep his lies straight. And we don't know what this other DOJ investigation was involving another district, but he apparently told prosecutors one story about this matter under Justice Department investigation. He told them a story that was bullpucky. And then he came back to them and they asked him about it again. And he told them a different story about that matter, which may also have been bullpucky. And then he tried to change it back to original bullpucky story number 1, because he hadn't been able to keep straight the first set of lies and what that had been. So this is the part of Manafort's filing which suggests that, yeah, prosecutors maybe had good reason to feel not at all comfortable with him providing anything that was supposed to be factual information about anyone. He's lying about his lying. But the final point in this Manafort filing today is perhaps more serious for people other than Paul Manafort. And that's because Mueller's team says that Manafort has been lying to them about his communications with people in the Trump administration. Quote, the evidence demonstrates that Manafort lied about his contacts. What the prosecutors are saying here is that Manafort tried to downplay the fact of his ongoing communications with people in the Trump administration. In at least one instance, he tried to secretly communicate with a member of the administration by authorizing, quote, a person to speak to an administration official on his behalf. They say he otherwise just didn't fess up to additional contacts he had with Trump administration officials. He denied those contacts to prosecutors when they asked him about it. He said that he didn't have those communications, but he did. So again, this was including a senior administration official, as described by Manafort's prosecutors. So again, this document was filed with the judge in Manafort's case today. And it's interesting. It raises all sorts of interesting questions. Compared with the other stuff that we got today, I think it doesn't actually tell us all that much if we're grading on a curve. Again, the most juicy stuff from the Manafort case right now may just not be public-facing yet. Mueller's team does say on the first page of this filing today that they separately submitted a motion to permit filing under seal factual material that relates to pending investigations or uncharged individuals. So this is only the stuff that is not about pending investigations or uncharged individuals. That juicy stuff was filed separately under seal, and we don't know when that stuff will be unsealed publicly to the public, if ever. You know, based on what we can see in terms of this Manafort stuff today, it does leave us with a few new open questions about the Paul Manafort case. Are we going to get to see that other material that was filed under seal? Are we going to get to see the stuff that's behind the redactions in this filing, right? When you've got pages like this, you want to know if those bars are ever going to be unbarred, if you're ever going to get to see what those words are behind those lines. We now know from this filing today that Manafort met a dozen times with the special counsel's office and the FBI and other prosecutors. Should we expect that any information he gave them will even be considered useful for other cases, right? Other cases related to this scandal, other defendants who may be facing prosecution other than himself. I mean, the prosecutors here in Mueller's office are describing the president's campaign chair, Paul Manafort, as an almost out-of-control liar. They're saying he can't even keep his own lies straight when he's trying to lie. If he's that much of a liar and that bad of a liar, does that mean his information is going to be considered useless in any case where they might otherwise use it? And what can we discern about the importance of the Konstantin Kilimnik stuff here? I mean, Kilimnik's already charged, but he's believed to be in Moscow and therefore out of reach of the U.S. Justice Department. This Kilimnik stuff that's in here and the possibility that him meeting with maybe this Russian oligarch might have been one of the things that Manafort was lying about. What's the significance of that? What's the significance of the fact that, according to prosecutors, Manafort has been concealing contacts with people in the Trump administration, including, according to the filing, quote, a senior administration official with whom Manafort was in contact with up through February of 2018. So there are a bunch of interesting questions raised by the Manafort filing. I mean, obviously, he appears to be quite cooked when it comes to his own prosecution. We don't know if the judge is going to order that there should be a hearing in his case so the prosecutors can actually prove all of this stuff in court rather than just asserting it in this filing. Prosecutors do appear to feel very confident that they could prove any and all of this stuff that the judge might want to hear about. So we'll get expert advice on this coming up. That's the Manafort filing. Now let's talk about what we got today in the Michael Cohen case.